Hey girl, welcome to the Get Your Guy Coaching podcast. My name is Anwar White, but you can just call me your own personal dating and relationship coach. Each week, you'll hear actionable advice, tips, and strategies that you can implement in your own love life. I'm talking about healing your heart, dating effectively, and understanding men so that you can, you guessed it, get your guy. Are you ready to level up your love life? All right, let's go.
I never felt the way I do about anyone but you.
Hello, my loves, and thank you so much for joining me today on the Get Your Guy Coaching podcast. I want to introduce a special guest that I have today. Her name is Dontea Mitchell-Hunter, and she is going to talk to us all about self-worth. Girl, thank you so much for being here.
Of course. I'm so excited to be here.
Girl, are you?
Yes. I can tell the whole background story if you want me to, but yes, I'm very excited to be here.
Yeah, well, I'm excited for you to be here as well. We're going to get into it and talk about all of the things. But first, before we get into kind of self-worthiness, I want to talk a little bit about what you do. So can you just tell the people like what you do, what you focus on, and how you got into it?
No problem. So when I'm not looking for the best cupcake shops, like in new cities, then I am working with BIPOC women who like constantly find themselves in unfulfilling relationship cycles, and they want to get out of that, and they want to create self-worth, self-love, and like that true internal happiness, whether they're single or partner. And so I do that online through my private practice called Soirees in Therapy. And that's what I do.
Let's talk about, you specifically said BIPOC. So what are some of those maybe unique challenges when it comes to BIPOC women?
Yeah. So like if we're thinking about BIPOC women and then self-worth, it's really hard to muster up self-worth every day on the hour when society doesn't show us as much as they can, when society tells us this is the standard of beauty and you compare that against yourself, and oftentimes you don't match what's being put out there. So I think it's a unique challenge because we have to create our own spaces and add seats to the table. And with all that on top of trying to love yourself and have self-worth, it could be a challenge.
Yeah, definitely. So you're talking about society. What are some of those things that you think women are believing?
Believing just in society as a whole?
Yeah. I mean, you said that society has all of these different messages, right? So
yeah.
I think a lot of people can have a lot of different messages, but it's about what we decide to believe in and what we don't, ultimately. So what do you think those messages that are really kind of creating maybe this lower level of self-worth for so many of these BIPOC women?
Yeah, I think there's just so much to think about. So when we think of people of color and let's take work, for example, and you apply for a job, and if your name is anything less than like the classic Eurocentric name, Amy, Emily, Elizabeth, whatever, there's anxiety around that. Applying for the job. Are they going to accept me? Am I going to be good enough? Should I list 10 years of internships versus just my last job? So there's that. And then you're in the job, and then you have to work times whatever to be seen as being promoted to maybe middle management, higher management, whatever that is. And you constantly feel this tension of like, there can only be so many of us. That happens. And I think that really transitions to other places with the dating pool. With what are my options? If I don't see a lot of people in the world doing what I want to achieve, maybe I want to direct a film, but I don't see any people that look like me directing films. Do I belong there? Is that the space for me?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. Now, you've spoken specifically about you kind of serving BIPOC women, but I think that we all suffer from low self-worth at times, or many times, right?
Oh, yes.
Why is that? What happens? I know you talked about certain messages for BIPOC women, but why?
It gets very intricate when we think about the why. And so when we have low self-worth, when we have high self-worth, focused on a low for right now, it's a lot of times because we are so focused on external messages. Like we are so focused on external validation. And so when we soak up what is coming outward in, that affects it. So an example would be maybe you grew up in a household with your family as a child. Maybe someone continued to say, you need to lose weight, you're fat, or you're lazy, or you're stupid, or whatever. And as a child, like those are those formative years. So after a while, you're just going to soak it up and you're going to believe that. And so fast forward to adult years and you're telling yourself, I'm so dumb. Like, how come I couldn't figure that out? That's coming from childhood.
Yeah.
It's just the voice that carries. And so who we're surrounded by, what we're taking in media wise, whatever, that affects our sense of self-worth if we're not checking that, if we're just kind of just taking it in.
Yeah. And as children, we can't check it. We take everything personally, right? That's just what the
Absolutely.
child ego is all about. Yeah, totally.
Absolutely.
Talk to us about some of these kind of self-worth issues that you talked about. Obviously, you talked about maybe having to feel like you have to work harder or do certain things. What are some ones that you've struggled with? And I'll share some self-worth issues that I've struggled with as well.
Yeah, let's get personal. I love it.
We have to. I think the listeners want to hear all about our shit, girl, so that
Of
they don't feel like
course.
they're in the shitter by themselves.
Okay, no, listen, I'm really good at what I do because I've been there, period.
Yeah,
And so I've struggled like working on things every day with not feeling like I'm good enough, not feeling like I'm too much, feeling like I don't belong, no one's gonna like me. So I struggle with those growing up, and it's taken a lot of work to not have that be like my default, like my main, like, yeah, I knew it, not enough, I'm being too much. So which makes me go inward and anxious. And now I'm silent. Now I'm stuffing my needs and I'm not talking. So people are like, what's wrong? And I'm like, if I say something, they'll judge me. They won't be my friend because I'm not good enough anyways. I don't belong here. And you run out, right?
Yeah.
All of that.
I think everyone's nodding their head right now as you say all of that, because I think we're all in the same boat.
Yes.
Thank you for sharing that. I think for me, it has really centered around my race and my sexuality, right? And so it's this, I'm not good enough. People are not going to accept me. So because of that, I feel like I always have to prove myself to other people. So if I'm playing sports, I need to be better than all of them. If I'm in the classroom, I have to get the best grades.
Wow.
If I, when I became a parent, I had to be the best parent. And the translation of that was my kids have to be perfect.
Of course.
Right?
Yeah.
They are a reflection of me. As we're both brown and lovely.
Yes.
We unfortunately have that pressure of I have to represent my entire community and race in anything and everything that I do. And so that's a lot of pressure. And with that can come, just it can cripple you at times, right?
Absolutely.
It can also make you feel not great and have a lower level of self-worth because no one's perfect. So there are going to be moments where, and I'll speak for myself, there are moments when I'm like, ugh, I can't, this isn't going well. I'm not great, right? Or something that my kids do that I've had to like check myself and be like, they're just doing what they're doing. They're learning. And it has been a struggle for me as well, specifically around sport, grades, and parenting. Those have been the three things where my self-worth has been like questioned regularly.
Yeah. No, you're right. Like as you're talking about it, I'm thinking of one of the pains I had for years. As you know, I'm from Seattle. I grew up there and then I eventually moved to Atlanta. And growing up in Seattle, I always struggled with my complexion being darker skin and dealt with all, like the class things, you're pretty for a dark skin girl, that kind of stuff, dealing with that. And so that really affected my self-worth as well. Cause now we're talking about beauty and okay, so I fit in the beauty category. Oh, but there's this thing that keeps me from being like at the top. So I'm just kind of here, kind of afterthought.
Yeah.
Those kind of things. So that comes up too, as I'm hearing you talk.
I'm so glad that you mentioned that because I think what happens is as we're growing up and we get those comments, right? Oh, you're beautiful for a Black girl, or oh, you're exotic, or oh, you're unique and interesting, but in that tone where it's like kind of a microaggression, we can start to internalize those things, right? And I think that it can really heavily affect our love lives. And so I want to talk a little bit about that, and I want to focus on how we're growing up because, like, similar to you, it sounds like you went to an all-white school because Seattle is very white. Or at least mostly white.
Yes, majority white. Yes,
and maybe some Asian individuals there as well, because I know Seattle.
Yes, Asians, Hispanic, had all of it, and still majority white. Yes.
Yeah. So I went to school with nothing but white people, and so not only was my race a factor, but my sexuality was as well. Well, I didn't have romantic experiences in those years that are so important, and I think why am I talking about this? I'm talking about this because I think it's important to realize that when you don't have those experiences, you can equate that with your self-worth in the love game, in relationships and love and dating, that oh, I don't have experience, so I must not be worth as much. Or because my knowledge isn't as great, I don't belong here, or it's not going to happen for me. And
Yeah.
it becomes this perpetual cycle. Have you experienced that at all? And if so, like, let's talk about it.
Absolutely. So let me know if I'm going in the direction you are wanting me to go.
No, you just talk. We're just going to talk and we're going to edit it and make it look beautiful.
So as you're talking, I'm thinking about dating and, when everyone starts to date and maybe you don't have a boyfriend yet. And so for myself, I found myself in the place where I'm just going to take the first guy that likes me.
Yeah.
Because everyone else is partnered and everyone else has their boyfriend taking the pictures and I don't have that. So let me just take someone. Not even asking myself if I'm ready, if I want that, but I had to have it, right? And so my very first boyfriend, we never spoke.
Oh,
He would try to come up to my locker and say hi and I would slam my locker and run away.
Why, girl? You just weren't feeling him, but he was just like arm candy or what?
It was just something I feel like I had to do. Everyone else had a boyfriend. And so looking back, I didn't really want that. Like, I didn't want that. It's just something I thought I had to do.
You wanted the status of it.
I wanted to fit in. So if all my friends were, well, I don't know if this is relevant to you, but where I was from, Dickies pants were everything. So if
yes,
all my
girl.
Okay.
What, the painter pants?
Yes.
Yes, girl, I had a pair. I'm not going to front.
Yes, so everybody had the Dickies pants. So if someone has Dickies pants, you get that too. If someone has a boyfriend, you get that too. Not even knowing what this means. Just you're supposed to have someone. And so that relationship was 7 days long, dead.
The longest 7 days of your life.
The longest torturous 7 days of my life. Awful. Yeah. And so you think about that. And as you continue to try to fit in, if you're struggling with like complexion issues, for example, I remember I only wanted to date people who were lighter skinned. Like that was, if you weren't lighter skinned and I didn't even see you kind of thing. Right.
Wow.
And if you really like hold that, it's like, because I'm trying to be accepted. And so if who I am as me and my complexion and all that kind of stuff is not what's being accepted, then let me attach myself to what is, right? And I don't think that way anymore. Like I left my chocolate mint. That is out the window. Like, yeah, it's just like talking about this. It goes so deep, so deep.
Yeah. I'm hoping that the listeners are able to understand that everything that we're sharing, and probably when they think about their lives and where they got their worth from, it wasn't self-worth, others' worth.
Yes,
right?
Absolutely.
That's
yes.
what it is. And so I think that others' worth equals low self-worth, right? That if we're so focused on that, then there's no way that we can have a higher level of self-worth, because it's not self, right?
Yeah.
It's others. So let's talk about kind of how we can reframe it so that we are focused on ourselves and we can actually have different thoughts and beliefs in this area of our life so that we can be successful in so many other areas. So how do you think about this? How do you help your clients kind of reframe self-worth?
So it's basically just like what you were talking about, this external valuing system, right? So one way to start getting into reframing is to really ask yourself, like, whose thoughts, whose beliefs are these? If I'm thinking about what is the standard of beauty, if I'm thinking about what house, apartment, city, where should I be living? And if that is not my own thoughts and beliefs, it's not gonna go well. And so when you start to ask yourself, like, really, what are my values? What is authentically me? That will help you break out of focusing on what others think you should do. And so you start to build up on your sense of self-worth, because it's all about evaluating what works best for you. And sometimes that's really hard to do.
Yeah.
So I would say, like, a part B to that, it's literally like, I have all of my clients do this, writing a values list. What do you value? And then really looking at that and saying,
can you give me some examples of what like some values would be?
Yeah. So some people say quality time with self, quality time with family, financial security, acceptance, validation, whatever the values, whatever those values are. If that means traveling, it doesn't matter what it is, like something that you highly value, because that's a part of your worth. And so we look at how much am I giving energy to these things that I say that I value? And oftentimes we're maybe hitting one of those, maybe. And so it's really like, okay, what do I need to do more of these things that I value? So that's just something else I would say.
I love that. We do similar things because one of the things that I think is important as we talk about self-worth or others' worth is that we're not focused on self, right? And
Yeah.
that we have to, and the way that I think about this is by letting our feelings lead, meaning like
Yes.
what feels good to you, what feels pleasurable to you, and the things that don't feel good, we're going to leave alone. The things that
Yes.
do feel good, or as you said, your values, we're going to lean
Mhm.
into and we're going to do more of those things, right?
Yes.
Even if it's like the voices in our head, right? If it doesn't feel good to you, we're going to leave that alone. We're going to put it
Yeah.
on the shelf and we're going to go outside and do our own thing with the things that we like, right?
Yes.
Another thing that I think about too is, I generally tell my clients that I want them to be thinking about different aspects of their life, different kind of timelines, 0 to 7, 7 to 14, 14 to 21, and think about the things that they loved in that timeline,
Yes.
that time frame, right? Because oftentimes that changes. And we don't think about this. We're living our everyday life without realizing that for me, 7 to 14, die-hard professional wrestling fan. I could not get enough of it, had all the action figures,
I love
every
it.
Monday, every Thursday, every Sunday, whatever, right?
Yes.
So one of the things that I've done is I've incorporated that into our family time. So now we are a family that watches wrestling.
Yes.
I'm able to connect with my kids, but I'm also able to connect with myself, that the things that make me feel good, right?
Yes.
It may sound silly to many. I don't really care because it makes me
Yes.
feel good. I love it. I love
Yes.
the drama. right?
Exactly.
What about for you? What are some of the values that you are leaning into right now?
Oh man, like definitely whatever makes me happy, whatever that is, even if it's scary. And so like I recently moved because I realized being in Seattle, I love it. I do. I love you, Seattle. I need sun consistently. And so it was scary to leave all of my like strong support systems there because I was chasing my happiness, chasing the sun, right? Talking about childhood experiences. When I was younger, I knew I was going to be a choreographer, like period. Like I was going to be a choreographer and a backup dancer. That was my goal in
For
life.
Janet or for somebody else? Who did you want to dance for?
Man, at that time, I thought I would be a backup dancer. I think like for Maya.
Yeah.
Whoever was hot at that time, like early 2000s, I was going to be a backup dancer. I just knew it.
Yeah.
And I always find myself kind of like dancing around the house. However, I wanted to do that more. I wanted to intentionally like have a dance party. And I've been playing with like, what if I pretend like I'm a dance instructor with the stick, like Debbie Allen with the stick? And I just like make up a choreography, like an 8 count.
Yeah.
Not even someone has to see it, but like I do it for myself because that's me. I love to perform, period.
Yeah.
And I love to do that through dance most of the time.
I love this so much. I think that these exercises are so important because it brings you back to you.
Yes.
Right? Ultimately. And one of the things that I think as we relate this to dating is if you're approaching your dating life and you aren't really clear on what makes you you and you're not presenting that, it's going to be really hard to be successful because you're going to be bringing 50, 60% of yourself.
Right? If that.
As we think about self-worth, we're only going to show the parts of ourselves that we feel good about, and that might not be 100%.
Yeah.
But if that's the case, what happens, unfortunately, and this is why it's so important to have such a high level of self-worth in dating is that, I think the research says that you can't fake the funk for more than 3 months. So at some point, you're going to show all of yourself, and you want to make sure that that person that you're dating and who you want to be with is good with the 100% of you, than actually not good with it. And then you guys break up in the 2 to 3 month mark. There's a reason why there are a lot of relationships that end after 6 weeks because you're what we call in dating strategically presenting.
Yes.
And in that strategic presentation, it can be a bit deceiving if you're not showing up and being your whole self because that person, I didn't sign up for that. That's not what I knew of you.
Yes.
Right? So
exactly.
Being able to have confidence and show all of yourself, which is obviously a high level of self-worth, whatever, good, bad, ugly, however you feel like it, and see if they like it, see if they don't, is I think so important. I was just telling my clients that. What are your thoughts on it as self-worth as it relates to dating?
Yeah, I love this topic. I do this a lot in my work as well, because especially when it comes to dating, if you're still really focusing on what the world says you should be, or what your family says you should, whoever says you should be, then when you meet this person, you're going to present who you think they want to see.
That's right.
Right. So maybe you're going to present you're a really clean eater. Maybe you're going to present
or that you don't eat a lot, even though you like to grub.
And you're not hungry. You just want a salad. I'm good. No big deal.
Yeah.
Right. Or you don't like to start singing in the middle of a conversation because the last word you said reminded me of a song. Right. And so within that, it's like you said, crippling. Like you really like dissociate.
That's right.
And now you don't know who you are, who you're supposed to be. What did you tell them? What are they expecting of you? So then you get frustrated with them because as your real self starts to peek through and they're like, wait, what? You're like, but this is me. No one can accept me. Like
that's right. That's the cycle, right?
Mm-hmm,
and then when you're feeling like, oh, no one can accept me, then you're feeling like there's nobody out there for me. No one's, I'm too much. They don't live for me. No one's checking for me, all of that. Well, in reality, we should have been showing all of ourselves at the beginning.
Exactly.
I tell my clients to talk their shit. Right?
Okay. Yeah.
TYS, right? Talk your shit. And I say that because as we were talking about, we get weird around guys. They'll come up to you. You'll start doing your shoulders, you're showing the napes of your neck, right? Playing with, girl, that's not you. When you're in a meeting and you're, kicking ass, that's parts of you, right? This other stuff. And, I love flirting. I think it's great. There is definitely, it's definitely beneficial for connection and things like that. But I think it's important for us to realize that you can't be changing it up, right? If that's not you, if you're not like that all of the time, you shouldn't be like that here.
Yes.
And I talk your shit means I want you to talk to these people like they're your best friend, as if you've known them forever. I want you to talk to them like they're your cousin that you haven't seen in a couple of years. You all are in a family reunion and you have a lot to catch up on, right? That's the sort of energy that you want to kind of be presenting, even when you're in the initial phases of just having your first conversations with them, right? It skips the line a bit in terms of a different level of familiarity and vulnerability, right? Because you're obviously going to be more vulnerable with those people. And then after that, they also want to be more vulnerable with you. And then you can have some connections. What are your thoughts?
It's contagious. Yeah.
Totally.
I think as happiness is contagious, laughing, and I think vulnerability is contagious as well. I think if you present yourself as so accommodating and so, let's just say kind of maternal, right? To this person that you're just meeting, they're going to expect, why wouldn't they?
Yeah.
Right. And so if it's not really who you are and you're not this overly accommodating person, it's just really going to mess you up mentally in the long run. And so I definitely agree with you. Like show if you curse, like show yourself.
Yeah.
I love that.
Definitely.
Talk your shit.
Talk your shit. I think it's helpful because one of the things that I think is important to think about as we are all healing is this transition from other people's opinions and how I feel.
Yeah.
And I think dating is such an amazing forum to actually practice that constantly, right? And I think in the practice of it, the self-worth, the levels can increase naturally, right? But we have to do it. We have to continue to show up as ourselves and be okay with it being polarizing. Not everyone's going to like you, and that's okay. Not everyone is supposed to like you.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a hard transition to get there, right? It's hard to go from who I think other people want me to be to figuring out who I want to be to now I'm showing people who I am. It's really hard. And I always talk to my clients about this, like when they do show up authentically, because you feel it, you feel the alignment, you feel like you're kind of skipping, you feel like your clothes fit just right when you're in that empowerment, that self-worth. And it's like after you do it, it feels like you just feel like you could take off like that for your pose,
For those of you that cannot see this, She is literally giving a superhero pose. Get it, girl.
That's
Get
how
it.
I feel. It's like,
Get it.
stop.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
it very much. That is it can be a difficult transition, right?
Yeah.
Do you have any exercises as we start to think about, really shifting the way that we're thinking about ourselves and our self-worth that we can do to kind of change our self-concept?
Yeah, I really, again, like this whole thing is so internal. Like you have to become curious about yourself and you have to be able to reflect upon yourself. And I know this is said a lot, and it's said a lot because it's effective. Really writing out like what you are grateful for. Because when we have low self-worth, we're just constantly looking for things that will validate why I'm not good enough, why I'm too much, why I'm not athletic enough, what romanticized enough, whatever that is. And so when you write out what you're grateful for, it really helps. Like you're pouring into yourself.
Yeah.
That's you pouring into self, not your best friend saying, but girl, you should be so happy. Like you got a new job, you got a new place. Like that can only take you so far. So pouring into yourself, getting really curious about, again, your values. Am I in alignment? And of course, another exercise, something I feel like people should do is, of course, go to therapy. You don't have to do this on your own. Healing is a journey, and it can be very, very uncomfortable.
Most definitely. I love being curious because the thing that I find that happens the most is that we aren't curious, that we actually either take something for fact or we judge it.
Yes.
Isn't it the reaction is not, oh, that's interesting that I had that reaction, or that's interesting that I had that thought. That person's bad. This is bad, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
And so I love just continuing to have this level of curiosity about who we are, who we're becoming, and how we're feeling and thinking and about life and ourselves. I think that's so great.
Yeah, definitely that, and give yourself grace.
Yeah. Let's talk more about grace because I think that's harder to do.
Yes, it is hard.
And my experience has been that oftentimes we're not given grace. So we don't even know what that even looks like to give to ourselves. Grace looks different to a lot of different people, right? So how can we give ourselves grace and like stay in the practice of it?
When I think of giving myself grace, I really think of like, if you were to envision someone who just sees you and accepts you, maybe this is a grandmother, maybe this is a grandfather, maybe this is the best friend, your mom, father, whoever it is, and say you imagine yourself as a 7-year-old and you're running and you're not even supposed to be running because your grandmother said, stop running so fast. You're like, whatever.
And you still did it because you're hard-headed.
Yeah, because whatever. They don't know, right? I got this. And you fall and you scrape your knee and you're crying and you're nervous because you weren't supposed to be running. And now I'm hurt. And now I'm going to go to grandma, and grandma's not going to say, I told you not to stop. I told you to stop running so much. You're just like, come here, baby. It's okay. That hurt. It's okay. Let me give you some Band-Aids, whatever. And when you're ready to go outside running again, you let me know. I'll take you outside, right? And so same thing applies to our adult selves. If we do something like if we're in a relationship, we break up and we know that relationship is not good for us. And yet we have that inkling of like, well, let me go back and try. I shouldn't. Let me go back and try. So you go back and try, you text, realize this is why I left this person in the first place. Give yourself grace. It's okay. You wanted connection. You were hopeful. You wanted to see if things were changed. And now we see that it's not. And that's okay.
Yeah, I love that. That requires that we're going to have to do that for ourselves. And for many of us, we didn't actually have that experience of grace.
Absolutely.
When you got your knee scraped, you heard, I told you shouldn't have been running. That's what happens when you run.
Oh, yes. The shaming, the blaming. Right? Yes.
So we take that on, and that's how we talk to ourselves in our head. And so I just want to add on to what you said and realize, and hopefully people will understand that you're going to have to kind of reparent yourself in some of these situations.
Absolutely.
And one of the ways that I do it personally is just by saying, oh yeah, I'm human. I always go back to my humanness. Right? Because sometimes we can forget, or we think that maybe we're not, and that we're supposed to do everything perfectly with no mistakes. And that's actually not what life is about. It's 50% great and 50% not so great. And like, I'm living my human experience.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And so always having that to kind of be tethered to, I think is important to just like level set and to help you get back on the ground when it comes to such situations. So that's something that works for me, at least.
Yes. I love that.
Any other things that you think that the listeners need to know about as it pertains to self-worth and leveling up?
You know, I think one of the biggest things is knowing that it's it's a journey. And so with any journey, there's going to be ups and downs. And so today, after listening to us, you might be like, yeah, okay, self-worth. Yeah, got this. And then tomorrow something will happen and you'll feel really low, really down. And so in those moments, again, like give yourself grace and just take care of yourself.
Yeah.
I just want people to know, like, this is once you identified how to increase your self-worth, you're not just always going to stay there. Like that's not the human experience, period. And so just knowing that it's going to be up and down and that's okay. You have tools now, you have resources, it's going to be okay.
I love that. I think that a lot of things are journeys, right? That like everything is a marathon. It's not a sprint.
Yes.
Even though we're trying to sprint on everything, like if you try to sprint a marathon, you're going to be assed out, out of breath, right?
Yes.
Cramped
Injured.
up. Exactly. So he's, as my great grandmother Granny would say, go slow so you can go some more, right?
Okay. Yes.
So that pace yourself, right?
Yes.
Let's just do a little bit each week, right? I think that the first inclination for so many of the listeners and the clients is, okay, I'm going to get this book and then I'm going to do this every day and da-da-da. No, let's do it a little bit, just a small bit, and let's try to be consistent on a weekly basis.
Exactly.
Intentional every month, right? So
yes.
slowly, gradually, get into this. And like you said, like your pace is going to change and you're going to have a higher pace or a lower pace in this marathon.
Yeah.
You got to keep on going, as they say. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for being here. This has been so lovely. And I know that so many people have gotten so much out of this episode. Now, for those individuals that need to work with you, girl, that want to learn more about you and your work, how can they connect with you?
So the easiest way to get in contact with me is just to go to my website, www.soireesintherapy.com. And there you can even, if you want to work with me intentionally with therapy, then of course they can book a free 15-minute consultation. I also have a podcast called Detox Therapy that a very special guest is gonna be on very soon. And
AKA me, y'all.
Pew, pew, pew. And how else? Oh, then of course on Instagram at Soirees in Therapy.
Awesome. Girl, thank you so much for being here. This has been so fun.
Of course. Yes. Thanks for having me.
Anytime. All right, my loves. I hope that this was helpful for you and that you are thinking about ways in which you can manage your self-worth in these streets, in these pandemic streets, in these life streets. With much love, I'm going to bid you adieu. Bye. Hey, girl. Thank you so much for listening to the Get Your Guy Coaching podcast. If you like this episode and want to talk with me personally, please book a free consultation at www.getyourguycoaching.com/apply or subscribe and leave me a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. Talk soon.